Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Z, and welcome to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. In today's episode, we are discussing a question, probably the most asked question that I get. And that is, am I dating a narcissist or are they just a jerk? So in this episode, I go through what it looks like, what the differences are, and some little strategies here and there that you can use to kind of test the waters. So I hope it's helpful and I hope it answers your questions that I know so many of you deal with. Hi everyone, it's Dr. Z and welcome to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. Today I am talking about the question I probably get asked the most, and understandably so. And that question is, am I dating a narcissist or are they just a jerk? Now, I'm going to go through this very systematically because it's really important that people understand what I like to call the function of behavior. So I'm going to give you a little behavior 101 lesson here. When I say function of behavior, what I mean is the underlying why. Why did that person do X behavior? Why at this very moment did the person do what they did? Okay, because we know with narcissistic personality disorder, the behaviors that they engage in, the underlying reason behind them is for power and control. Okay, so for example, if you're graduating from school that day and they get mad at you because you didn't compliment them on how they looked, and so they pick a fight with you, the function of that behavior has nothing to do with what they're wearing. They're not mad at you for not acknowledging it. It has nothing to do with that. The underlying function of why they did this now at this particular moment was they wanted to ruin your special occasion because they wanted to have access and control of your mood because you're involved in a situation that is making you happy that they don't have control over. They're not the ones making you happy. They don't like that. The attention's on you. They don't like that. So the function of their behavior of starting an argument with you because you didn't compliment their outfit choice, the function of that is to take ownership, take control, gain access to your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors. So the reason why I want to make that very clear is because that really is the telltale sign. It's the test that I have people use when they're trying to figure this out. Now, obviously, I don't want you diagnosing everybody around you by this one little way of doing it, but it'll make sense as I kind of expand on it more. So again, it's not like a one size fits all approach, but this is really what I work with people on gaining an understanding of. Now, that being said, I am putting this out there. Please understand that just because somebody may not be a narcissist does not mean that you then don't have a big enough reason or a strong enough reason to exit the relationship. If you are not happy in a relationship and you've tried it and you've worked on it and you're still not happy, or the relationship and the person you're with is amazing, but for whatever your reason is, you are not happy, you don't need to have a reason. And that reason does not need to be narcissistic abuse to leave the relationship. It's so important for people to understand because I'll get all the time, are they a narcissist? Almost as if they're not a narcissist, if they don't meet criteria, then you should stay with them. And that's not true. People leave for a whole different host of reasons, and you can still be in a very toxic relationship and leave. You don't have to be in a toxic relationship with a narcissist to give yourself permission to leave. Okay? Diagnosing somebody as a narcissist or thinking that it's narcissistic abuse doesn't give you kind of extra permission to leave. You can leave whenever you want. I'm not saying it's easy, obviously, but I just want to make that clear. So those are the two things that I want to get out there before we dive into this episode. Okay, so again, I get this question all the time when I get coaching consults. Are they a narcissist? Or are they just an asshole? And I always say this, that all narcissists are jerks, but not all jerks are narcissists. So let's start. How do you know? So I'm going to go through this and give you some little pointers and tips to use when you're trying to figure this out. Again, these are not diagnostic tests, and please don't take them as such. And again, there's a whole bunch of variables involved. Everybody's situation looks different. So, keep that in mind as well. So, in the beginning of a relationship, whether that's a friendship, whether it's a coworker, it's your boss, it's a significant other, it doesn't matter. But what I want people to get into the habit of doing, if you're questioning this, let's use a romantic relationship just for the ease of an example. You start dating somebody and it's going really well, and you feel like you've met your soulmate, right? And they're telling you all of these things, and they're sending you flowers every day to your office, and they're texting you constantly, and you feel so freaking good, because who wouldn't? But because you follow my page, or because you have a friend who had an issue with a narcissist, or because you're just really paying close attention to information that you hear now about narcissism, you know that the things that they're doing kind of fit the description of love bombing. But one, you're not sure because you're not a psychologist, so that's fine. You shouldn't be sure. Two, it feels really good and you really hope that it's not love bombing, so you kind of don't even really want to know. Or three, you're just totally unaware. And that's why you're listening to this. So let's say they're texting you all the time. They're constantly wanting to see you. They're sending you flowers. They're taking you on vacations. They're telling you you're the one. They've been waiting for you. And some part of you is kind of like, oh, I know, doctors, you talked about this. I don't know. This kind of fits the description. And I was in this before and kind of looks familiar, but oh, it feels so good. I don't want to get out of it. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to cancel plans with them suddenly. Obviously, don't do it if you have like a big event or something like that. But if you're just going to meet for dinner and drinks and it's early on in the dating, cancel plans. And I know people are saying, that's so rude. That's so rude. Well, I'd rather you cancel plans and see what the outcome is than end up a year later stuck in a relationship that you feel you can't get out of. So what I want you to do is cancel plans. Tell them, I'm not feeling so great. Can we postpone till tomorrow or the next day? Or I'm so sorry to do this. My friend came in town last minute. I'm going to go out with them. Or just you're really tired or you're at work late. I don't care what you want to say. Again, this is early on in the relationship. So you still are kind of in that making plans stage. It's not just assumed that you're going to see each other on a weekend. I want you to see how they respond. Do they respect that time boundary you set? Do they say, absolutely, I totally understand. Do what you need to do. We'll touch base in a couple days, or feel better. Let me know if I can get you anything. We'll touch base in a couple days, feel better. And then they just give you your space. Or do they get really angry at you? Or do they totally disregard your boundaries completely and show up at your house with soup, with Tylenol? And I know some of you listening are saying, okay, but that's nice to do. It's nice to show up at your house with these things. And you're right, it is. But it's not appropriate in the beginning of a relationship when you're telling them, I don't want to see you. I don't feel good. I'll touch base in a couple days when I feel better. And they're totally disrespecting your boundaries when they ask, can I do anything? And you say no, but yet they show up at your house, which means you need to answer the door, right? Like, let's say you're really sick and you need to answer the door and you look like crap and you don't want to talk to anyone, or you're just doing this to see their reaction. My point of this is, I know people are saying, oh, it sounds so manipulative. It's not. You want to see how they respond to your boundaries. So do they violate? Do they show up at your house with snacks and medication? Do they continue to text you all night long about how much they miss you and they wish you were together? And again, it sounds sweet, but sometimes it can really be a disrespectful boundary violation. You're sick, you don't want to talk, or tell them you're going out with your friends, you tell them where, and they show up. Somebody think, well, that's nice. They wanted to see you. Boundary violation. Again, I'm not saying this fits for everybody. Some people, this may be totally fine, but it's going to be in the context of other things. And the reason why you would be doing this is because you already have a gut feeling something's off, or it's too good to be true, or these are kind of like love bombing situations. So you're going to test this because you kind of have a weird feeling about it, like it's too good. So boundary violations, right? Or, you like I said, you tell them your friend is in and they show up where you're at, or you're out with your friends and they continuously text you all night. Well, can I see you later? Or, can I just come and see your friend and meet you? And I miss you. And, just constantly texting you all night, trying to take you out of the moment. Okay. Or making you feel compelled to have to write back so they don't get mad. Those are all responses you want to be aware of. The last one, or two of the last ones, do they absolutely freak out? Do they curse you out? Do they tell you how rude this is? How could you break plans with me last minute? This is so, nobody does this to me and this is horrible. You're so obnoxious, and end things with you. Is that the reaction? Because if that's the reaction, that's one of the things that I say is disproportionate to context, meaning there's nothing wrong with them being upset. Hell, there's nothing wrong with them thinking it's rude. But it's a whole other animal when their response to you is lashing out in anger over canceling plans. They can be angry, sure, but the lashing out and the rage is disproportionate to the context. Okay. Now, again, if they got you tickets for Taylor Swift and you're staying at a hotel and they have this whole thing planned and you cancel plans, I can understand being disappointed, angry, whatever. But again, lashing out, no. Angry, yeah. The other thing they may do is they may completely go silent on you. You cancel plans and they go totally cold. No response, no acknowledgement that they got your text, no hope you feel better, no hope you have fun tonight, no we'll reschedule, just gone. Off the face of the earth. Totally ghosted you. You don't know where they are. You can't get in touch with them. How they even blocked your phone number. Blocked you on social media. Okay. A response like that, again, is what I call disproportionate to context. Okay. It is larger than the situation calls for. Okay. Now, again, if somebody breaks plans with you, you have every right to get angry and upset. But these are kind of disproportionately loud responses that don't make sense. And if they're responding like this to that type of behavior on your end, imagine how they're going to respond to other things that are way more significant. Now, let's talk about why this is kind of one of these tests that I like to have people do. For starters, it shows a deliberate boundary violation. It shows zero respect for your wishes while simultaneously, purposely going in the opposite direction, full force, calling you 50 times that night instead of their usual 10. So not only are they disrespecting your time, disrespecting your boundaries, but they're also going overboard when they do it. Okay. So I know people are saying, oh my God, I canceled and I was sick and they texted me, I hope you feel better. Twice. They're a narcissist. No, that's not. That's just being kind. This is extreme. I'm talking about extreme behaviors. And I think this is one of the problems, especially on social media. These people, TikTok therapists, whatever you want to call them, will describe narcissistic behaviors, but in the wrong context. And that gets confusing. That's why everyone thinks everyone's a narcissist, because there's nothing wrong with somebody texting you, feel better. There's nothing wrong with somebody texting you again 3 hours later saying, have a good night, hope you sleep well, hope you feel better. Or somebody saying, I'm going to bed, I hope you're having fun with your friends, touch base soon. There's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't mean they're narcissists. This is like a deliberate overkill. Okay. The rage is extreme. The silent treatment, the ghosting you is extreme. The boundary violation is extreme. Okay. That's what I'm talking about. So why is this important? Well, for starters, it shows you their reaction to boundaries. They don't feel the need to follow or respect anybody's boundaries. problem becomes in the love bombing stage, this can be looked at as, oh my God, they care so much. So I really want people to be careful with that because they most likely will come back with an apology. I'm so sorry. I really wanted to see you, or I'm so sorry. I was looking forward to this so much. I'm really sorry I acted like that. I really like you. Okay. That's a red flag. All right. One or two times, that's different. But this exaggerated response is what I'm talking about. Okay. So that's a good indicator of if somebody is narcissistic or they're not. Okay. Now I'm not saying they're not toxic in other ways, but that boundary violation is a big one. Okay. So here's the other thing that I have people do is, and that goes back to what I said initially, what is the function of the behavior? Okay. And what happens when you call out that function to them? So let me back up and explain what I mean by this. The function of a narcissist behavior is always going to have to do with power, control, manipulation, right? We talk about all those kind of three things: getting supply, getting attention, um, having the focus be back on them, having them be relevant, or having them feel big and powerful. That's the function of their behavior. How they dress it up, meaning what the behavior manifests as, almost doesn't matter. Okay. I'm not saying it's not important. It's important, but the function of it is what matters. Okay. Whether they do it by driving like a total lunatic to scare you, or they do it by deliberately picking you up late to make you late. It's still the same function: power and control and manipulation. Okay. So the reason why that function piece is so important is because when you ask yourself in the moment, okay, what are they trying to do in this situation? If the answer is power and control, and repeatedly that's the underlying function, you're dealing more with somebody who is narcissistic in nature. Whereas, let's say, for example, and I know people are going to say, well, how do I know the difference? And I will get to that, I promise. Hang in there. Let's say, for example, let's say, for example, that you've been dating somebody for a month. Okay. And as the dating progresses, you find that they start to disconnect a little more and more and more. Okay. They're not texting you as much, right? Or no, let's reverse that actually. Hold on. Let's say you're dating for a couple months and their behavior is starting to appear clingier. Let's go the opposite. They're texting you a lot. They're asking you for plans a lot. Okay. And I know you guys are listening and you're saying, okay, well, you just told us if they're texting you a lot and they're making all these plans with you that they're narcissists. I didn't say that. I said, what is the function of those behaviors? Okay. So they're texting you a lot. They're calling you a lot. They want to make plans with you a lot. They're staying really late when you tell them to go home. All of these boundary violations. But and again, I'm not saying this is right. Please understand this. And I'm not saying it's something that doesn't need to change. But let's say that the function of those behaviors is because as this person stays in a relationship longer and they develop more feelings for you, more intense feelings for you, they are triggered by the thoughts and the worry and the abandonment fear of, oh my God, what if they break up with me? Which has to do with the insecurity of them, right? Of, oh my God, I don't want them to leave me. I care about them so much, it's going to kill me. And for whatever their reason, they have this like big abandonment trigger. Okay. Where for whatever reason in their upbringing, they are really hypersensitive to anything that may be interpreted as potential abandonment. And then what happens is because they start to feel smothering, they usually get broken up with. Okay, we see this pattern all the time in relationships. Somebody becomes too much, the other person starts pushing them away, they break up with them, and then the person who was clingy says, see, look, everybody leaves me. So let's look at the function of their behavior. Why are they calling you so much? Or why are they texting you so much? Why is this not love bombing? Why is this something different? Here's why. you need to look at the function of their behavior. Okay. If you cancel plans on them and they start to get clingier, right? And you call them out on that, they may not even be aware, right, of why they're doing it. Or they say something like, I always do this. I get so clingy and then I push people away and they end up breaking up with me. And you say to them, listen, I care about you. I don't want to break up with you. I'm just canceling plans. And with that reassurance, they feel better. Or you telling them, this means nothing like that. I care about you. I don't want to end things. I didn't mean it to come off that way. And the person then adjusts their behavior as a result of that. Right now, that person feels a little bit more confident. It doesn't mean they're not going to do this again, but the function of their behavior has nothing to do with manipulating you. It has nothing to do with gaining control and power over you. It actually is more out of their anxiety and their fear than it is about power and control. That's not even present. It's their total anxiety and discomfort that they felt when you cancel plans with them. They don't feel that it's a personal attack of their character. They're not perceiving it as a slight. They're not perceiving it as, losing control. So then therefore they need to increase their control of you by showing up at your house. That's not this. Okay. So the function of it is they're so worried and anxious that you're going to break up with them because that's what happens to them all the time, let's say, or it reminds them of a situation that they grew up with, let's say. That's different. So here's where I can tell you right away, using this as an example, not right away, but I can tell pretty easily if it's, if somebody is a narcissist, or let's just say that they're changing their behavior, or somebody is a narcissist or they have toxic patterns of behavior, let's say. Like this last example I gave, it's a toxic pattern, but it doesn't mean it's a narcissist. So if I'm working with somebody and I am calling out their obvious toxic patterns, toxic relationship patterns, here's what I notice. Either they will hate that I just called them out on that, right? And obviously this is over time. They'll hate that I called them out on it. They'll deny it, or they'll argue it, or they don't see it as a problem. It's everybody else's problem. It's not theirs. This is their pattern. If you respond that way, that's on you. Versus somebody brings up their toxic relationship patterns and I, call them out on it and I say, do you realize when this person does this, your response is this? I'm wondering what that is about. If the person is able to show that they understand why they do what they do, and that it absolutely pains them, that their behavior causes hurt, anger, sadness in the other people around them, that's called empathy. And even though it may be really hard, as we all know, for those of us that have been in therapy, changing patterns of behavior is extremely difficult. Even if it's totally unhealthy for us and we're aware that it's healthy for us, we still do it anyway because it's familiar. We've all been there, myself included. But you understand why you do what you do, right? So this person understands why they do what they do. Now, with therapy, they're realizing when they're doing it in the moment. But third and most important, they understand now that their patterns of behavior are not only hurting them, but it's hurting the people around them. It's causing people to shut down. It's causing people to become uncomfortable. It's pushing people away. They don't want to hurt other people. That's the last thing they want to do. People that have toxic patterns of behavior that are not narcissistic in nature, those patterns are coping strategies for them that once worked for them, but now don't. They don't work anymore. They don't want to hurt anybody. They want to change. They don't like how they feel, right? They're full of anxiety, or it makes their depression worse. It makes their isolation worse. They don't want to hurt those around them. And when you bring it to their attention, listen, like those behaviors that you're doing, buddy, or those behaviors that you pulled last night really hurt me. And maybe initially they're defensive because that's what we do sometimes, but then they start to see, and especially within therapy, all right, I do this a lot, don't I? I'm going to try not to do this. Bear with me. It's going to be hard. And again, not everybody's going to jump to change. That's not the issue. The issue is, do they know they need to change it? Do they know that it hurts other people? And do they care? That's the difference. So let's go to narcissism for a second. This is going to be a whole other episode, but narcissists know what they're doing. It may be on automatic pilot because they've been doing the behavior for so long. So it's kind of this just like memorized behavior. But when called to their attention, right? When patterns are called to their attention, they are fully aware that they're doing it. They know they're doing it. When toxic patterns are made aware to somebody who's not a narcissist, they may be like, oh my God, I didn't really, okay, I did it again. All right, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to hurt this person. I didn't realize I was doing it. Now I'm more aware of it. Thank you. However they respond. Even if they give pushback at first. I have that all the time. People don't like change. We're creatures of habit. We hate changing, even if we know it's for the best. But a narcissist will not only be aware that they're doing it, but they don't care if those patterns of behavior hurt the people around them. They don't care. They don't care if it causes any type of drama. They don't care if it hurts other people. They don't care. As long as they can obtain what they need to obtain in any given situation, some form of power, control, manipulation, whatever it is, whoever gets hurt in the process, well, you were in the way. You were in the way of me getting what I needed to do, and that's just a consequence of it. And sorry, not sorry. If you don't like it, leave. If you don't like it, do something about it. If you don't like it, well, then maybe you should be a better spouse, right? So they're not going to take accountability for those patterns. They're not. They serve a purpose for them. Whereas somebody who is not a narcissist, but just has really toxic patterns from their upbringing, won't respond like that. Again, maybe initially they'll deny it or they'll fight you on it because it's uncomfortable as hell to change. But the key difference is the function of the behavior. The function of it is most likely to make them not feel anxious or to remove whatever icky feeling they're having immediately. It actually has nothing to do with you. They're not trying to control or manipulate you or do anything like that. It's just an unhealthy pattern that they have. Now, that doesn't excuse their behavior. You're not going to say, oh, I'm not mad at you because I know you didn't mean to do that. No, you hold them accountable. The difference is somebody who's not a narcissist will take that accountability. They'll take that accountability on. Again, maybe not immediately, but they will take that accountability on. They may go back and forth with their behaviors, but it's within the framework of trying to change. They want to change. They can change. It's uncomfortable as hell. They'll mess up. We're human. But the last thing they want to do is cause harm for other people. They have empathy. They take accountability. They're willing to sit with their own shit. A narcissist? Absolutely not. And again, going back to the initial thing that I said about the function of the narcissist behavior is to gain some sort of power and control over you. The function of somebody with toxic patterns of behavior who is not a narcissist, the function of that behavior is it's familiar, so it in some way makes them feel better in that moment. Let's take drinking, for example, okay? Let's say when somebody gets super, super uncomfortable, super, super anxious, they drink a lot. They don't want to do that. They know it's not healthy. The next day when they're sober, they care a lot about the consequences of their actions because they're drinking, because they're anxious and depressed, and they hate the way they feel. So they drink to temporarily get rid of it. Okay? Now, I am not excusing that behavior by any means. And it 100% is wrong. It doesn't matter what the reason is why they drink. The outcome is wrong. They've hurt people. But the function of the behavior was not to deliberately cause harm. It's the result of their behavior, yes, which is why they need to take accountability, which is why anxiety and depression is an Axis 1 diagnosis, whereas narcissistic personality disorder is an access to a personality disorder, which I'm not even going to get into the whole DSM thing, but just so you have an idea of why there's this inherent difference. Now, substance abuse and narcissism go hand in hand. There's so many addictions commonly associated with narcissistic personality disorder: gambling, sex addiction, obsessive shopping, or drug and alcohol abuse, okay, to the extreme. Workaholic, extremes, right? Extreme behaviors. So I know people are listening and saying, okay, so what, narcissists don't drink? What, how do we know if they have an alcohol problem? How do we know it's a narcissist or not? Here's the telltale sign. When their substance abuse is treated effectively and they're no longer using, after they have adjusted and their brain chemistry has adjusted and everything's regulated, their personality is going to shift. If they're not a narcissist, the behaviors they engage in when they're drinking probably look narcissistic, absolutely. Even after they're not drinking and they're realizing the consequences of their actions the next day, or they gambled so much money away, they gambled their life savings, and so now they're doing whatever they can, even if it's completely wrong and shady, just to gain money back so that they don't have to worry about this. The behaviors on the surface look very similar, but the function's different. When, again, I'm not saying they're wrong. They're not wrong. They are obviously wrong. But the difference is when somebody's alcoholism or drug addiction is effectively treated and they've now adjusted to this new brain chemistry, to their new behaviors, to the new situation that they're in, and they're getting accustomed to living sober, the behaviors that look narcissistic in nature aren't there anymore. It's like when they become sober, they're no longer, quote, a narcissist. And so people always say to me, well, they're really narcissistic when they're drunk. Well, of course they are. But that doesn't mean they have narcissistic personality disorder. That's why this function stuff is so important. If when they're sober, their personality goes back to, quote, who they were, that's not narcissistic personality disorder. However, when they're sober and their personality gets worse or stays the same, then you know you're dealing with something different. It's more likely a personality disorder, chronic, long-standing. Alcoholism just escalates it. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. I know that can be a little bit confusing, but those are really the two main ways to differentiate in the moment or even over time if you're dating somebody that's a narcissist versus somebody that's a jerk. The other thing is, are they a jerk just to you? Are they a jerk to everybody? Are they constantly like raging on you and then reeling it in really quick when you guys have to go to a PTA meeting for your kid's school? And then they're, Mr. or Mrs. Charming to everybody. Typically, again, not all the time, but typically when you're dealing with somebody who's not a narcissist, and let's just say they're just a jerk, they don't differentiate, like they don't say like, I'm going to be a jerk to this person, but not this person. I'm only going to be an asshole at work, but I'm not going to be that way at home. They may, if they're in a bad mood that day, it's kind of like everybody's going to get it. With a narcissists are really good at being super manipulative with one person or raging on one person or abusing one person and then turning it off just like that and being so charming with everybody else. Okay. Now, the opposite is true too. A narcissist is always a narcissist, where a jerk isn't always going to be a jerk. But the difference is that person may have a bad day and they're just an ass to everybody. And then after whatever happens to cause them to be a jerk solves itself, then they go back to non-jerk and apologize for what they did and blah, 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 and everything's fine. Doesn't excuse the behavior. I'm just saying that jerkish behavior no longer is present once whatever was bothering the person is gone, right? So take stress. If something's stressing me out all day long, something happened and it caused me so much stress. So I'm being like really short and really agitated with everybody around me. And they're like, what is wrong with you? Why are you being this way? But whatever was stressing me out, let's say it got resolved later that night. Tomorrow, I'm going to be much different. I'm going to be more relaxed. I'm probably going to apologize to the people that I pissed off or that I was rude to or that I was short with. That's not a narcissist. A narcissist is going to deliberately be manipulative, deliberately be then charming in a different situation. Okay. They didn't have something that caused them that day to be a jerk. And then the next day, once that stressor is gone, now they're back to baseline. That won't work with a narcissist because it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with in the moment, getting whatever it is they need, no matter what the cost. Getting the power, the supply, the manipulation in the moment, no matter what they need to do. It's not like a fleeting jerkiness. They're not just that way because something pissed them off. They are like that because that is who they are. So there's a difference. I know people are going to have a ton of questions about this episode. So for this episode specifically, please feel free to go to my website under drjamiezuckerman.com. I always say it's Jaime, not Jamie. Blame my parents for that one because they wanted to be original and unique. So drjamiezuckerman.com, and you click on podcast, the podcast tab, and it'll take you to my podcast page. And at the bottom, there's a link you can click for questions. And this is definitely one of those episodes where I know there's going to be questions. So please feel free to ask me whatever questions you need to. I will try my best to answer them. I just want to make sure that people really understand this difference. So before we end, let me just go through the three main things we talked about. How to tell somebody is a narcissist or a jerk. Again, these are not clinical tests. Please don't use them as such. But number one, what happens when you set a boundary? Okay. How do they respond to the boundary? Is it disproportionate to context, or does it make sense for the situation? Do they respect it? The second thing, what happens when their patterns of behavior are made known to them? Do they take accountability? Do they have empathy that they're hurting people? And while it is really difficult to change, they really do want to. It's just hard for them, but they don't want to hurt the people around them. And they're devastated that they have accountability and empathy. Do they have them? Okay. So boundary violation. Do they have accountability and empathy for when they hurt people? And the last thing, okay, between toxic patterns versus narcissistic personality disorder, when they need to turn it on and off, are they? Or did something happen that day? Did something trigger them? Are they under a tremendous amount of stress? The resulting behavior is not the greatest. Again, I'm not excusing it. And then once the stressor's gone, they're back to baseline. Because if that's the case, you're not dealing with narcissistic personality disorder. Okay. So I really hope that makes sense. I hope that gives you some clarity. Feel free to ask me a question. And I will talk to you next time on Next Up Narcissism. Hope everybody has a great day. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. I hope you found it useful, but most importantly, I hope you found it validating. Want to work one-on-one with me? Visit my website at drjamiezuckerman.com to book a personalized coaching session, and be sure to check out my on-demand workshops on topics like co-parenting with a narcissist, life after leaving, anxiety management strategies, and more. Again, that's drjamiezuckerman.com. You'll also find links to my interactive workbooks, merchandise, resources, and newsletter sign up. Next Up Narcissism is as much your podcast as it is mine. I want to hear your feedback and what you want to hear. So make sure to leave a podcast review wherever you listen, or send an email to nextup@drjamiezuckerman.com. Again, that's nextup@drjamiezuckerman.com. Be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to tune in next week to see what's up next on Next Up Narcissism.